Good evening, everyone. Welcome to NTD Tonight. I'm David Zhang. Here is a preview of some of today's top stories. In Taiwan, dozens rescued and hundreds are still trapped. Emergency personnel are working to find people following the powerful earthquake. A federal program flying migrants to Florida. Find out what Governor DeSantis and other officials are saying about the reported surge in illegal immigrants. Did you know late library books could cost you jail time in a county in central Texas? A mother of 5 shares how she got into the situation. First up, in Taiwan, emergency personnel are busy rescuing survivors of the powerful earthquake. Many of those who were rescued had been trapped in mines, and many of those awaiting rescue are hikers in a mountainous national park. Taiwan authorities say 70 people were rescued from 2 separate quarries, and 1 person was killed by falling rocks at a quarry. In total, the death toll has risen to 10. At least 4 were killed inside Tairoku National Park. It's a popular tourist attraction near the epicenter. Over 1,000 people were injured. More than 700 people are still stranded, but most of them are in contact with the rescue teams. Some 42 people are missing. Many of them are believed to be in Tairoku National Park. Entire sections of highways collapsed on the island's eastern coast, and landslides continue to pose a threat to people. In Hualien, which is the epicenter, workers have started demolishing damaged buildings. Over 300 aftershocks followed the deadly quake, forcing people into emergency shelters. Turning our attention now to the Israel-Hamas war, President Joe Biden and Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu are speaking today for the first time since the Israel's deadly strike on a convoy of 8 workers in Gaza. Israel has acknowledged the responsibility for the strikes, but said the convoy was not targeted and the workers' deaths were not intentional. The country continues to investigate the circumstances surrounding the killings. The strikes killed 7 workers with World Central Kitchen, including a dual U.S.-Canadian citizen. Biden explicitly blamed Israel, saying he was outraged by the deaths of the World Central Kitchen workers and adding incidents like this simply should not happen. But the strikes appear to have not threatened the relationship between Israel and the United States, its largest and most important ally. Biden is set to greenlight an $18 billion sale of fighter jets to Israel. At the same time, the Israeli military is halting leave for all combat units. This comes amid threats of retaliation from Iran. And a day earlier, the military said it had drafted the reservists to boost aerial defenses. Florida Governor Ron DeSantis is now commenting on the immigration program by the Biden administration. It allows migrants to fly directly into the U.S. A report this week found that over 80% of those flights land in Florida. Since last fall, over 380,000 migrants flew directly into the U.S. It's part of a parole program started by the Biden administration. A report this week by the Center for Immigration Studies found over 320,000 immigrants landed in Florida.
First of all, it's an illegal program. They're bringing people in who don't have a right to be in this country. Someone that Biden flew into America, ended up in Massachusetts, now is under charges for sexual assault against a developmentally disabled 14-year-old girl. Now,
DeSantis says the state has noticed a sudden uptick in immigrants arriving in Florida. He added they might land in Florida and then head to sanctuary cities like New York or Chicago. Meanwhile, House Republicans opened a new investigation into a sharp rise of immigration cases dismissed since President Biden took office. This as Texas attorneys went back to an appeals court to defend the state's new immigration law. And police in Ohio arrested and charged a 46-year-old suspect from Mexico for murder in Butler County. The Butler County Sheriff addressed the same individual last week, warning the suspect has been deported 7 times.
He's carrying a loaded firearm. How does he get that loaded firearm? He's not carrying that pistol to go hunting. These people aren't vetted. They're coming across, and we have no idea who they are.
The sheriff says the illegal immigrant has been jailed 11 times under 7 different names and 3 birthdays. At least 3 people were killed and several were injured after a powerful storm system spawned tornadoes and damaging storms from the south to the Ohio Valley. An 82-year-old woman was killed in Collegeville and a 70-year-old man was killed in Aston Township after trees fell on their vehicles while driving. Streets in the Midwest were transformed into rivers after extensive flooding. Strong winds and heavy rain can be seen outside a house in Kentucky after tornado warning. In Kentucky, at least 1 person was killed as a result of destructive storms there on Tuesday. Severe thunderstorms brought flooding, downed trees, power outages, and road blockages across West Virginia. At least 13 homes were damaged and some residents were injured in Fayette County. Did you know late library books could cost you jail time? At least that's the case in a county in central Texas. A mother of 5 found out there is a warrant out for her arrest for some books she checked out for her kids last year. NTD's Jason Blair spoke with a woman to find out how she got into the situation.
Kaylee Morgan went with her 5 kids to the DMV in late March to renew her driver's license, which was set to expire in about a week.
So I tried to renew it online, and they wouldn't let me.
When she arrived, she learned some surprising news.
She told me I have a warrant out for my arrest. And I'm shocked. Haven't been pulled over. I don't get into any trouble.
She was then referred to the court to get more information.
And I asked, what is this about? And they said it's over a library book that was past due.
She found out that the late notices were sent to an old address. She said she remembers checking out some books on Vincent van Gogh from Navasota Library for homeschooled kids. They were returned late, but she remembers that they did get returned, so she didn't think much beyond that.
I was having some complications in my pregnancy with this one, so it was a little bit harder to get the books back. They were late. In hindsight, I should have called and let them know they were going to be late, but I didn't know that it would turn into a warrant out for my arrest.
The official charge is theft of government property. She was also issued a $570 fine and is not allowed to drive. The single-income family of 7 has a GoFundMe started to help with the fine and hiring an attorney.
I know several moms have said the same thing happened to them before me, and they canceled their library cards, so it's not like the library didn't know that this was a problem. They just have refused to change the ordinance.
Kaylee hopes the attention with her case will help others. She hopes people will keep it respectful if they decide to voice their opinion to local authorities, and she doesn't advocate for any harassment. She also said that any extra money from the GoFundMe donations will go toward paying off other people's late fees at Navasota Library. Jason Blair, NTD News.
Exactly how big of a threat does bird flu pose? And what are health officials saying about the recent outbreak? Here's what we know so far.
Bird or avian flu is affecting a growing number of cattle herds in the U.S. This week also saw the first known instance of a human catching bird flu from a mammal. Although health officials say the risk to the public remains low, concerns are rising. The director of the CDC said Wednesday the agency is taking bird flu seriously, but stressed that the virus has already been well studied.
Unlike COVID, which is a completely novel or new virus, avian flu is known to us. And we've been thinking about vaccines and treatment and tests for quite a number of years. But this is a new development.
Avian viruses spread naturally in wild aquatic birds like ducks and geese, and then to chickens and other domesticated poultry. Since 2020, the virus has been spreading among more animal species, including dogs, cats, skunks, bears, and even seals and porpoises. In the U.S., this version of the bird flu has been detected in wild birds in every state, as well as commercial poultry operations and backyard flocks. Nationwide, tens of millions of chickens have died from the virus or been killed to stop outbreaks from spreading. Last week, U.S. officials said it was found in livestock. As of Tuesday, the Department of Health said it was discovered in dairy herds in 5 states: Idaho, Kansas, Michigan, New Mexico, and Texas. This strain of bird flu, type A H5N1, was first identified as a threat to people during a 1997 outbreak in Hong Kong. In the past 2 decades, nearly 900 people have been diagnosed globally, and more than 460 have died, according to the World Health Organization. There have been only 2 cases in the U.S., and neither were fatal. The vast majority of infected people have gotten it directly from birds. but scientists are on guard for any sign of spread among people.
So the fact that it is in cattle now is definitely raises our concern level, and we have some work to do to better understand that.
The CDC says while there is no major threat to humans, the agency wants more people to get tested for it. The CDC says those who should get tested are people who have been exposed and are showing symptoms. A person in Texas who tested positive last week worked on a farm and had direct contact with a dairy cow. The virus can be found in milk from sick cows. However, there is little threat to humans, given that most milk in the market is pasteurized. Federal health officials say raw milk can pose a serious risk to those who drink it.
We'll take a short break now, everybody, but here's a look at what we have for you when we come back. Will a super bloom blanket California again this spring? Experts weigh in on the possibility of wildflowers blooming this year. Busy medical students in Australia make time to play live music for cancer patients. An uplifting story of compassion and giving back. Those stories and more coming up on NTD Tonight. Welcome back to NTD Tonight. I'm your host, David Zhang. Uranium mining is underway near the Grand Canyon after laying mostly dormant for decades. The project faces battles with the environmentalists and Native Americans.
The largest uranium producer in the U.S. is ramping up work at a mine less than 10 miles from the rim of the Grand Canyon. The long contested project is within the boundaries of what is now a national monument. The project has sat dormant since the 1980s. The work is unfolding as global instability and growing demand drive uranium prices higher. The Biden administration and dozens of other countries have pledged to boost the capacity of nuclear power worldwide, ensuring uranium will be a key commodity for decades more. According to a spokesman for the project, the mine will cover only 17 acres and will operate for 3 to 6 years, producing at least 2 million pounds of uranium, enough to power the state of Arizona for at least a year with carbon-free electricity. The market dynamics are good for the industry, but environmentalists and Native American leaders are concerned about contamination. The Colorado River flowing through the Grand Canyon and its tributaries are vital to millions of people across the West. For the Havasupai tribe, their water comes from aquifers deep below the mine.
Will California see a super bloom this spring? Many people are anticipating that. We'll hear what an expert has to say.
April showers bring May flowers, but will California's wet winter lead to wildflower superblooms again this spring? After years of drought, last year's wet winter resulted in huge fields of poppies in places like Antelope Valley and Anza Borrego Desert State Park in Southern California, as well as bursts of lupins and iris along the rugged Northern California coast.
I think in general we've had a very mild year, and mild is good. So one of the biggest kickers for super blooms is when we have early heat waves. That tends to burn out those young little seedlings. So when we really haven't had that this year, which is fantastic. So that consistently cool temperature, fairly steady rainfall at good frequencies has really set us up to have a pretty good super bloom across the state.
The forecast remains decent for a second vibrant burst of color throughout the Golden State this year, but experts warn the bloom may not be as vibrant as last year, partly due to recent cold temperatures. Experts note that several factors contribute to the likelihood of a superbloom, including rainfall patterns, temperature fluctuations, and soil conditions.
Drier Southern California will have more dramatic super blooms because they don't get as much rainfall typically to have as much grass competing, non-native grass outcompeting those flowers. As you move further north, rainfall increases, you have a higher level of grass there, and so that makes it more competitive and more difficult. So where you do see super blooms in Northern California typically tend to be on areas of steep slopes or thinner soils because those are areas that the grass can't establish and be as competitive.
Wildflower enthusiasts and photographers are still scouting potential bloom sites, ready to capture the natural beauty on social media.
Who wouldn't want to be in what looks like a painting. Just the aesthetics of it. It's it's not very often or for very long that you can be somewhere where it's a massive sway of colors that aren't just green or maybe golden brown. And I think the other part is the fact that it just happens on its own. And, many of us love gardening, but we have to put work into keeping these things going. But when it happens spontaneously from Mama Nature, it's a really spectacular experience.
California state parks officials remind visitors to stay on designated trails and not to pick flowers, since removing them can mean fewer seeds to grow wildflowers next year.
Over to sports, a major trade just took place in the NFL. Stefon Diggs now joins the Houston Texans after being traded from the Buffalo Bills. NTD's Tyler Castillo has the details.
The Buffalo Bills have traded wide receiver Stefon Diggs to the Houston Texans in exchange for a 2025 second-round pick. During his time with the Bills, Diggs reached a 1,100-plus yard receiving mark each year with the Bills. In addition, he also led the NFL with 127 yards and 1,535 yards in 2020. With the Bills losing Gabe Davis and now Stefon Diggs, their wide receiver core has plummeted in threat potential. However, the Texans' wide receiver core just got a whole lot more dangerous with the trio threat of Tank Dell, Nico Collins, and now Stefon Diggs. The 30-year-old Stefon Diggs will most likely be utilized as a reliable veteran presence that quarterback CJ Stroud could count on. Overall, the Texans have skyrocketed in offensive power within the last 2 seasons, with the additions of rookies such as CJ Stroud, Tank Dell, and with veterans such as Stefon Diggs and Dalton Schultz.
In the NHL, American-born goaltender Jonathon Quick now leads the league in this one stat. Let's take a look.
New York Rangers goaltender Jonathon Quick is now the all-time win leader among American-born NHL goalies. He surpassed Ryan Miller's 391 wins with 392 wins in a victory against the Arizona Coyotes earlier this week. 38-year-old Quick has potential to be the first American-born goalie to also reach 400 wins sometime this season or during next season if he opts to play another season. Jonathon Quick joined the New York Rangers this offseason after winning the Stanley Cup last season with the Vegas Golden Knights. Before that, he spent most of his career with the LA Kings, the team that originally drafted him in the 3rd round back in 2005. During his time with the Kings, he won 2 Stanley Cups and won a Conn Smythe Trophy back in 2012. Of course, after being traded from the Kings and landing in Las Vegas, he received another ring for his impressive portfolio. The New York Rangers also held a ceremony to award Quick a silver stick for the milestone. Jonathon Quick is currently 15th in all-time goalie wins, where he could win 2 more games to surpass Sergei Bobrovsky for sole possession of 14th place.
At a hospital in Australia, a string quartet performs for patients and staff in the cancer unit. The musicians happen to be second-year medical students, and they put on a live show every 2 weeks despite a grueling schedule. Here's their story.
Doctors train long and hard to gain the knowledge and expertise to serve others. These medical students take time out from their challenging schedules to play music for cancer patients at Gold Coast University Hospital in Australia.
So we just found a few people who played string instruments, so we wanted to make an ensemble together so that we could connect and play. And we were just thinking of ways to, do some good with our music.
Patients, their families, and staff love the live performances.
I thought I was in the wrong place. I thought, I'm not in a concert hall, yet it's live music, as you can always tell live music is compared to something that comes out of electronics and speakers.
The music really does give them a sense of joy, a sense of community and belonging, and that's for both the people listening but also the people playing the music.
Medical students usually have a grueling schedule, including classes, studying, homework, research, and more. Why do these future doctors take time to play in the quartet on top of their busy schedules?
A lot of times in medicine, if you don't give the time to volunteer, you will spend it all just studying. And I think volunteering is a great opportunity to just take a step back. I think give back.
For patients, the music is a welcome and uplifting respite from the problems they face.
I've got various things happening inside my body that grow and probably eventually put an end to you. So what better way to go out than the beautiful sounds of these young people in the string quartet.
Many describe doctors as compassionate and empathetic. These volunteers already seem to be exhibiting those traits well ahead of their degrees.
This Saturday at 8:30 p.m. Eastern Time, NTD's China in Focus has prepared a special report about how the United States helped the Communist China grow strong enough to take on the West. Here's a look.
From less than 1% of the world's gross domestic product to a massive 19%. That's the marker of China's development in just 3 decades. How did the communist country grow so fast? And who helped it along?
Never in history has one country funded the rise of its enemy, which is what the United States has done.
It's an existential threat where the Chinese Communist Party is seeking to essentially destroy the United States, who they believe is the one country that can stand in their way of achieving this great rejuvenation of China. Across the board, you can pick a topic and you can see the pernicious influence of the Chinese Communist Party.
And we're in this Cold War situation, this period of intense security competition that we must now resolve.
Speaking of China in Focus with Tiffany Meyer coming up next. In more China news, Taiwan lashing out at China, calling the regime, quote, shameless. This after Beijing used Taiwan's earthquake to push its political narrative. More on that on China in Focus with Tiffany Meyer at 9:30 p.m. Eastern. And that's all we've got for you tonight. We'd like you to join us again on NTD Tonight every weekday at 9 p.m. I'm David Zhang. Have a wonderful evening.